People from both sides of this argument are here today to show their support. You can see some of them here behind me supporting their cause and protesting. The Alliance Defending Freedom law firm will argue the previous pro-life law dating back over 100 years should be the law of the land, claiming Arizonans elected officials repeatedly that took that stance. Doctors at Planned Parenthood will defend their stance that abortion should be recognized as a medical procedure in the state. Many here today agree and disagree with these stances.
I do believe that overturning Roe was a huge step forward and that we're only going to be moving more and more forward, and that it is my hope and belief that eventually everyone will be in the same page, that everyone deserves the right to life, not just the born, but babies in the womb, because we were all once babies in the womb too, right? And everyone alive in here today has been given the gift to be born. Their mother chose that, and I want every woman to know that she can choose that, and that everything's going to be okay.
I've been working on women's issues for basically my whole career in Arizona, and I know that the way that women can be in the driver's seat of their own life is if they can decide when and how to start a family. What we're seeing happening in Texas right now could ultimately happen here. It's so important that we just keep politicians out of these decisions. We need to keep the choice about whether to start a family between a woman, the pregnant person, and her doctor and her family.
As of right now, the 15-week abortion law is in place. Anyone who is seeking an abortion can make an appointment, undergo counseling services, and then return 24 hours later to move forward with the procedure. Now, if it goes back to the 1864 law, which was on the books, it would be a near total abortion ban with no exceptions for rape and incest. The only exception would be to save the life of the mother. Reporting in Phoenix, I'm Sarah Robinson. Back to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Sarah. And just within the past hour, we've heard from leaders on both sides of this controversial issue about today's hearings. Take a listen.
The Arizona people want to affirm that life is a human right. Whatever may happen in a future legislature or through the ballot initiative, life should be protected.
The real-world consequences of this case are huge. Whether abortions will remain legal up to 15 weeks, or whether abortions will only be allowed when it's necessary to save the life of the mother.